Welcome back to Data Movers, the digital future. I'm Maxie Reynolds, CEO and founder of Subsea Cloud.
Hey everyone, I'm Candace Sipos with JSA. Welcome back. Thanks for checking out another episode in our 8-part mini series, The Digital Future, or what we're colloquially calling Data Movers 2.0 over here. So we're focusing on all things talent. And first, our new tradition, we have to start out by asking Maxie anything interesting that you've read lately.
Okay, I've got two for you. I'll try to be quick. So, fairly recently, it was pointed out to me that the difference in generations isn't just age. And although like generations are sort of bookended by the start and end year of their generation, what actually is interesting is the comparison of what, say, like teens and young adults say about themselves compared to the previous generations of this. And I hadn't really thought of it, like I hadn't really thought of it like that before. And then also I read that Gen Z are like taking a little bit longer to grow up relative to probably our generation. And they're, less likely to be doing some of the things that were at their same age, drinking alcohol, driving, dates, working during high school. So there's that. And then the other thing I read not too long ago was a book called The Coddling of the American Mind. And I think I've probably bought 10 copies and handed them out to my friends, which is probably why they don't come around anymore. But basically it discusses like trends and attitudes and behaviors and cultural shifts that is observed among mainly Gen Z. And it critiques like a few harmful ideas, fragility, emotional reasoning, and like us versus them thinking, which we've kind of observed over multiple generations, but definitely that one. And then it gives some antidotes to those. So I really like that book, and it was sort of relevant to today's discussion.
I was really looking forward to this episode. I think it's a really interesting one. So I was reading some articles about Gen Z in the workplace, and I came across one from Outside Magazine and it had this concept of different generations have different languages of respect. So kind of like, how you heard about the love languages. So it's kind of like respect languages. And so the concept being just because you find something disrespectful in the workplace doesn't mean that it was intended to be disrespectful from the other party. So I thought that was a really interesting way of thinking about it. And it kind of made me think, I don't know if you remember this tweet that went viral a couple of years ago about how younger people have more of a tendency to say no problem when you say thank you instead of you're welcome. And so this tweet went viral of like, this is unacceptable. Like if the answer is you're welcome, and of course it was like a boomer or somebody saying that. And so it was really interesting response that person got about like why that actually might be if you like look at it a little deeper. So the responder was saying for older people, they don't see helping as what's expected of them. So they're going above and beyond in their minds. They're doing a little bit extra, whereas younger people feel like helping is a given. And so they're stressing that it wasn't a burden to them. So it's kind of a different stress of the response there.
Right.
And so it was just that made me think of the different languages of respect, kind of like.
Yeah, there's definitely sort of a difference in the language for sure. Even culturally, like broadly culturally, things that are acceptable to say in Scotland are absolutely not acceptable to say in the US, so on and so forth. So then you have this clash of like cultures broadly and then these like micro cultures within. But the one thing you said that stuck out, because it was on the Coddling of the American Mind, was about being generous with how you view someone's intentions. Most likely, I think you can normally tell. You don't normally need to ask follow-up questions if someone's being mean to you. You kind of get it from body language, tone, everything else. So if you're not seeing those things, maybe the benefit of the doubt is okay. Intentionality does matter, but also you're being generous with how you view other people's intentionality.
Yeah, absolutely.
This got philosophical very fast.
I know.
Let's move on.
I feel like we could take up the rest of the episode talking
Yes,
about this. So maybe we should bring in some
great.
folks to keep us in line here.
Let's.
All right, so let's dive in. So we are bringing together on data movers 2.0. We're bringing together leaders to tackle a different topic related to closing the talent gap in our digital infrastructure industry with each episode. So today, I'm very excited for this industry, what we're calling this industry guide for working with Gen Z. Not everybody that is on today's episode is Gen Z. I'll just preface it that way. I am very much a mid-millennial. So we
Mid-millennial. That's so depressing. Can we just say millennial? I don't want to say mid-millennial. No. Millennials. I'm a young millennial.
I know. It was so
Go
sad.
on.
I thought I was a young millennial until I looked up the dates as I was preparing for this episode. So that sent me into a bit of a spiral, I must say. But in any case, we are going to talk about what younger folks bring to the table in the workplace, how we can attract and retain more of them, etc. And I think you've got a couple stats for us.
I do stats. The referees of uncertainty, as I like to call them. So believe it or not, the oldest members of Gen Z are 27 years old now. So they are definitely working months. And then also Gen Z make up about 30% of the US workforce, kind of to be expected, or at least well by 2030, according to the US Bureau of Labor statistics. And that's in large part because more than 10,000 baby boomers are reaching 65 years old every day. And that's going to be us one day. And if you keep saying mid-millennial, I'm going to feel like that's a lot sooner. And then also, Biznow reported that 75% of Gen Z respondents said that they would think twice about applying for a job if they weren't satisfied that the organization's diversity and inclusion efforts were sort of to their liking. And more than half said they wouldn't work at a company that doesn't share their values. And I think that is a huge sort of step change. That is different than when I was first looking for a job, sort of, over 20 years ago now. And then Gen Z is also more diverse than any other generation in the workforce. And it's about 39% identifying as Black or Hispanic compared to 22% of baby boomers.
Interesting. All right.
Wild.
I've got one to throw in there as well. This is not really a stat, a quote that I thought was interesting. So this is from Deloitte, and I think they sum it up pretty nicely when it comes to what Gen Z is looking for in employers. So they wrote, while salary is the most important factor in deciding on a job, Gen Z values salary less than every other generation, which is really interesting. To win the hearts of Gen Z, companies and employers will need to highlight their efforts to be good global citizens, and actions speak louder than words. Companies must demonstrate their commitment to a broader set of societal challenges such as sustainability, climate change, and hunger. So it's not just the words, it's definitely the actions, more so than with any other generation, it seems. So to get us started, we are going to introduce everybody one by one. We've got a 4-person panel. So first up, we've got Valeriya Chulyukina, Energy Project Engineer for Northshore, which is a sustainability performance company for data centers. Valeriya, thank you so much for joining us. And what brought you to the digital infrastructure industry? And also, if you want to talk about what was important to you when you were initially looking for a job.
Yeah, so what initially brought me to the data center industry was sustainability. I was looking for a job where I could make an impact on a greater issue. And I had a friend in the data center industry already. And she was talking about the project she was on. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, can I be on that? And as soon as she was out of her internship, rolled right in, took that over. But then when I was looking for a job, not only was I looking for sustainability, I was looking for flexibility. I wanted a job where I wasn't going to be pigeonholed into one role right at the beginning. I wanted to experience a lot of things, and that's what really drew into my company now.
Excellent. I love that.
Awesome.
Great.
Yeah.
And so what one word comes to mind when you think about the digital infrastructure industry?
The one word that comes to mind when I think about the data center industry is innovative.
Love that. Yeah. And you kept it short and sweet.
Yeah, I know. Well done. Okay, so next up we'll bring in Cody Clegg, Director of Sales and Marketing at OPTK. networks and industry leader in fiber-based networks. Cody, hi. What brought you to the digital infrastructure industry, and then what was sort of important to you when you were looking for a job?
Yeah, I'm gonna answer that a little bit differently in that I was just looking for a role overall that I could just grow in, and I was really pigeonholed in my previous industry I was in. I was as high as I could go. I really just wanted to find an industry that was going to constantly grow. I got really lucky. I found a guy that was in the telecom industry, and he was creating a new division, and he just gave me the opportunity to come in as a regional sales manager and help him build that division from scratch. It went from 0 to almost 248 people within 2 years. And that kind of just skyrocketed my career. I found another company that was more on the actual infrastructure side of things. And that's what I truly wanted to get into, to help really grow fiber in how internet's growing and how the network's going to grow over the next 3 to 5 years. In my personal opinion, and I think being in Nebraska, we're right in the middle of the United States, it's a really good opportunity for us to connect both coasts where it just doesn't exist today. So it was exciting to me.
How long have you been in this industry now then?
I'm going on 7 years, but on this side of the industry, only 2 years, which is different than the retail side.
Interesting. Good that you're finding that growth though. Then what would, like, one word, if you could use just one word to describe the industry, what would that be?
I'll say boom, mostly because I like the word, but also because the industry is booming. It's in a growth pattern right now, and it's going to be for the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, I like that. Interesting.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Cody. That's super impressive about how much you've grown that division so quickly. All right. So next is Colleen Corey, National Channel Manager at TierPoint. So Colleen, you know the drill. Same questions for you. So what brought you into the industry? And then what was important to you when you were looking for a job initially?
Perfect. Yeah. And thanks for having us here today. You know, really looking forward to this panel. So if you told me in high school or even college I was going to be in digital infrastructure, I wouldn't have believed you. Sometimes I still don't believe that I am. So I went to school for marketing. I loved actually working with senior citizens and assisted living and nursing care. So I was actually going to kind of shift into that, but an opportunity kind of dropped in my lap through a connection. And, you know, they said, hey, if you can drive down to Philadelphia, I was living in upstate New York at the time, said if you could get down to Philadelphia by tomorrow noon, I'll have an interview for you. So jumped in the car, drove down, had an interview for a data center company. And 2 weeks later, I started working in this industry. So, you know, it's definitely been a learning curve. And I didn't think I was going to stay with it, but it is constantly evolving. And I've really learned to love the whole industry and everything that's going on. So, call it fate or luck. I don't know, but it's been a great experience. So when I was looking for a job out of school, I was looking for flexibility and a place where I could go where I could learn and just develop. And I would say those are still probably my top reasons or what I look for in a company or a job. So, and then one word to describe, I kind of already said it, but it's evolving. And I think it will continue to do that.
I love that.
I think so too. Yeah, thank you. That was great. Okay, so then lastly, we have got Alexandria Iveson. Alex, then what brought you into this industry, and like what was important to you when you were looking for the job?
I didn't get into this industry with any intention to. I kind of fell into the data center business. I was working in technology solutions for JLL, in another division of the business, and they brought me over to support an opportunity that we had on, and I realized that there was lots of potential for growth in this sector, and I thought I'd stick around and see how it played out. And I'm a year in now, so still relatively new, but learning something every day, and it's an exciting industry to be in, which has kept me interested. And so I've got no plans to leave now.
Okay, great. Perfect. What is one word then that you would use to describe the industry?
I'd say I'll repeat the same, but exciting. It's an
Exciting,
exciting
yeah.
industry. Yeah, it's so new, really.
It is. It's sort of, it's not nascent, but it's new in terms of how aware the general public are of it, and I think that does make it interesting. Once there's public policy and the public are looking towards us, things do get interesting for the good and the bad. So yeah. Okay, cool.
Very true. Very true. Well, thank you so much, Alex, for being here. And we're going to bring everybody back together now. So this is more of our kind of traditional panel portion of our podcast episode. So we'll start with one person for each of these questions, but anybody can feel free to jump in and add whatever insight that you might have. So just a stage setting question quickly. And maybe Cody, I'll start with you if you don't mind. So what do you think younger folks, Gen Z, younger generations in general, bring to the table for our industry?
I think it's interesting. They've really had internet and connectivity their entire lives where I didn't. And that's their ability to adapt to everything that we do in this industry is just so quick compared to what maybe even older people. It's just an interesting thing to watch. And and especially in the sales side of things, they just care. They care so much about the people that they're doing business with, where when I was coming up, hey, get sales. And so it's just an interesting dynamic that I believe that the younger generation has that maybe my generation doesn't. We're adapting to it, but we don't have it like they do.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way to put it. I actually don't have a lot of experience working with Gen Z, but that is a very positive spin on, I guess, some of the more negative things that you hear from boomers. Those boomers. Okay, well, let's maybe stick with the C's. So, Colleen, come to you next. What can we go through maybe one of the challenges in cross-generational teams is communication. I think that we kind of know that to be true now. What are some of the key differences in how Gen Z communicates, maybe relative to other generations, and how can everyone work together to bridge that communication gap? It's a broad question, but
yeah, I'll take a stab at it. And Candace, in kind of the introduction, you said, how a lot of time Gen Z replies with no problem. And I mean, I haven't read that, but I completely understand it. And I feel like that kind of sets a stage. I mean, the respect, and it's just, we kind of I'm talking like a Gen Z or millennial, I'm kind of in between. I think there's just different ways that we kind of show our respect and how we respond. But I also think Gen Z communicate much more efficiently, I would say, and less formal. So preferring text messages, Teams, Slack, etc. We see a lot of, or hear a lot of comments like, oh, this doesn't need to be a meeting. And and I think that's kind of a big difference in generations, and not saying, there's definitely times when it should be a meeting. But I think that's a huge difference. And then Gen Zers tend to use kind of more visuals. Like, I'll throw in a GIF into our Teams chat. I'm definitely the youngest on our teams. No one responds to it, but I think it's funny. If it's for a happy birthday or, a big sale that was closed, I kind of see the differences there as well. But one way that we could bridge the gap, definitely having open communication on when something needs to be more formal, or, when it's easier to brainstorm ideas, bounce ideas off of each other when you're in person, on a video call, anything like that. So I think kind of having that, guideline would be a good way to bridge that.
Yeah, I think that you're probably right. Absolutely. One of the things I was thinking about as you were talking was about like the slight deviations that we have across generations. And I think every past generation thinks it happened overnight. Like one day it was just like this. One day we all just started saying no problem. I say no is sort of my version of that. And but it's actually cumulative changes over time, over generations. And I wonder if that would be like broadly helpful for generations to know. Like we're not trying to upset you. We're just it evolves over time. So yeah.
And if there's one takeaway from this episode, it should be that everybody should put more visuals in their presentations. I think
absolutely
very fair. Like there's not a presentation that I'm like, oh, I wish this had less visuals.
Less, yeah.
Alex, Valeriya, Cody, any input on the communication question?
Yeah, I mean, we did an exercise when we had a team that ranged quite a bit in age and experience, and we went through everybody's communication preferences, and we put those in a document, and we put them in our team chat, and we just shared that, and we just said, I'm a millennial. I hate getting a call that I wasn't expecting, right? Because it sends me into a panic. I'm like, what have I done? Why is this person calling me? I don't like that. So then I put that in. Please don't call me without letting me know. And please don't just send me a message saying we need to talk, because my brain will instantly go to the worst case scenario. So I need that kind of structure. I need either an explanation of what you want to talk about in that message, or send me a message and say, this isn't anything important. When you've got a minute, can we catch up? That's my preference. And so I've shared that with the team. They've shared theirs. And actually it made the communication between the different generations in our team a lot easier. And people understand what is expected of them.
Yeah, I've been part of that exercise before too. And I think it brings up this important point of like, at the end of the day, everyone's so different, right? Like regardless, like it's not like, just because you're a millennial or a boomer or Gen Z that you automatically ascribe to all of these characteristics. So I think looking at it at that individual level is so important. And I find that really helpful, like knowing people's communication preferences that I'm working with. Okay, so another question we have, how can any generation, millennials, Gen Xers, boomers, et cetera, help Gen Z feel supported and empowered in navigating this industry? Because it is so quick moving. Like everybody was saying before, some of those words you used were booming, exciting, et cetera. So how do you feel like we can kind of prop up the younger folks in the workplace? Anybody want to take that one?
I can jump in. I think the biggest thing I found was just genuinely allow them to feel like they have a voice. I found that they find that extremely important, which is awesome. I love that. If you give them the ability to just fail a little bit and without having that worry of being able to speak up, I feel like they get way more engaged with. I have generations across all generations in my team. They feel more okay with talking to a 55-year-old and saying, "Hey, here's my thought," and they welcome that. I feel like if you give them that voice, they kind of run with it. And historically, what I've seen, so I just feel like if you make them feel supported, they're gonna grow and they're gonna bloom for you.
Yeah, Candice, do you see that in JSA? Like, do you have younger generations than us millennials?
We do, yeah. We actually than us mid millennials, yeah. We just recently hired a couple of folks out of college. We definitely do and see a lot of value in hiring, and we have an internship program as well. So sometimes our interns then become employees at JSA, and I think huge shout out to JSA. I'm not just saying this, but I do think that we do an especially good job, especially for a relatively smaller company. We've got, maybe 70 total full-time people. We do a really good job with training programs and making sure that we set people up for success. And so one of the ways we do that is what we call our Peacock program. Peacock has always been JSA's mascot. So that's where that comes from. But essentially, it's just like a one-on-one. I wouldn't even necessarily call it a mentoring program. It's just bringing in a newer JSA, or regardless of what age they might be, and pairing them up with somebody who's been at the company for a while. And I would say it's just a mutual kind of learning experience for both parties. So that's been really helpful as well.
So it's not mentorship per se. It's this sort of cross learning system.
Exactly. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Very cool. Alex, then let's go to you for this one. So, in your experience, what are some of the common misconceptions millennials or, you know, Gen Xers or boomers or have about Gen Z in the workplace? And then how do you think that these misconceptions can be addressed?
I think one that I've heard quite often is that they are entitled or quite lazy when it comes to joining a workforce. I actually don't think that that's a very fair stereotype. I do think that they have very defined boundaries in general about what they want from a role, what they expect from the company that they work for, and what they need to feel supported to have a work-life balance. And they are much more willing to come out and say that and make a point of making those boundaries really clear than most millennials that I know certainly would feel comfortable with saying, I'd rather burn out than tell somebody I need to take a personal day to have a break. But they're so much more open about that need. And that requirement from their work to support their mental health, to support their work-life balance, to make sure that they're feeling empowered at work. And actually, I don't agree that I think it is a misconception about that generation. I think it's actually a really good thing. I think they're equipping themselves and their peers, and actually, by having them in the workforce, they're probably doing us a favour as well, because workplaces are starting to bring in initiatives to support the wider business's mental health and physical health and things. And I think that can only be a positive thing, particularly post-COVID when a lot of us struggled. I think that's a great thing that they're willing to put that out there and be really clear about what they want. And I think it's a benefit longer term.
Yeah, I would agree. I bet there are stats, Candice, for us to pirate on when boundaries are accepted and respected, and if there's positive relation between that and productivity. Because I think you said something, Alex, which was interesting, which is, and I have felt that way before. I'd much rather just burn out than say to someone like, I'm not coping. I've got 10% of the tank today. I'll do it at home. I'll say like, I need to have a little lie down. Everyone stay away from me. But I won't do that at work. And so, it's interesting to hear the positive sides of that, because I anyway take that in my stride as if that's some badge of honor, and it probably isn't. But
yeah, the way you're thinking about it is exactly where my mind went, Maxie, with what you were just saying, Alex. Like, there I'm sure are stats out there about teams being more productive when they're well rested and when they have those work-life boundaries and that sort of thing. There's definitely stats about teams that are more diverse being more productive, and that's another, diversity and DEI in general is something else that Gen Z is really pushing in the workplace, as and also as the most diverse generation, like Maxie was saying earlier, that is in the workplace right now. So I think there's so much deeply positive change that's coming about in the workplace because of the younger folks who are really pushing for what is valuable and important to them. So totally agree, Alex. Okay, so last question before we go into the lightning round. So maybe we'll come back to you, Cody. Looking at it sort of from the opposite angle, we want to give I feel like we've mentioned boomers a couple of times. We want to give them a positive shout out, and some of the other generations that are kind of, I don't want to say on the older end, but in the workplace. So looking at it from the opposite angle, what are the biggest lessons that you've learned from older generations in the workplace?
Yeah, I would say when I first started, I was 19 years old when I first became a sales manager, and I had sales reps that were in their 50s. And for me, I didn't take it from a perspective of, I'm young. I took it from a perspective of, I got to learn from these guys because they're not going to be here and 15, 20 years from now. And they had value. And so I just asked a lot of questions. The biggest thing I really learned from them was have fun while you're working, but work hard. But give people the opportunity to have a voice. And that was just, it spoke to me, and it's kind of carried through my whole career. I like to have fun while I work, and I do have fun while I work, but I also work extremely hard when I am working. The biggest thing I do with that is making sure my team is growing with me and working hard with me, but they're having fun. they all have a voice. They are all able to speak openly, which sometimes can lead to some issues, but it ultimately it leads to success, and we grow when we're doing those things. And so shout out to that older generation. There probably a lot of them are retiring now. Just touch a lot of them, they're retiring now, but they helped me drastically in my 16-year sales career by just being there and telling me like, hey, have fun. It's okay to have fun, because it is.
I love that. Yeah. Excellent. Anybody else want to answer that one?
Yeah, I think I've learned some incredible things from the older generations that I've worked with, including professionalism and prioritization. And I think that's because my Gen Z generation and those of us that went to school during COVID, we didn't get as much experience with professionalism in the workplace. And now I've had amazing mentorship with how to talk to different types of clients, how to really prioritize and ask what you need of people. But also, as we were kind of talking earlier, us younger generations are looking more and more for jobs that align with our values, or jobs that have a bigger mission or goal that really we take personally. So being able to kind of separate job from life and values and this bigger thing, it helps be able to prioritize, because sometimes we'll be like, I want to do this and that and this and everything to help them succeed. But end of the day, like, take a step back. It's your job. Work those 8 hours. And I've seen it in the internship at our company. Like, people are so pumped up and ambitious and ready to do what they can, but having to take that like step back and be like, here are the priorities. Here's what I'm able to really accomplish in a day. And tying it even back to what Alex was saying, speak up when they're burnt out or need a break.
Yeah, it's such an important lesson. All of that, which I'm still actively learning day to day, is the prioritization is a tricky one. Awesome. Okay, great. So I think we can step into our lightning round, which is secretly my favorite part of this whole thing. So maybe we'll just go back down in the order that we introduced you in. So Valeriya, I'll start with you, and I'll just ask you these 3 questions. So first question, what is your top piece of career advice now for high schoolers or college students?
Top piece of career advice, find something, and I know I just like said, like, don't take things too personal, but find something that is personal to you. Find a company that aligns with a bigger picture that you agree with.
I love that. And actually, I'm going to go around the horn and have everybody answer the same question. So I'll go to Cody next. So Cody, what is your top piece of career advice for high schoolers or college students?
Yeah, it's kind of more of a quote, but it's, set goals, work as hard as you can when you can, but don't forget to bring a towel. That's just make sure you have fun while doing it. I say that to my team pretty regularly, so it's kind of just one thing we really kind of reiterate throughout the week. But it rings true to anyone who's really trying to get into telecom to just do a career is, work hard, but have fun while doing it.
Yeah, great advice. Okay, Colleen, over to you. What's your top piece of career advice?
I would say don't get stuck on one idea or one path that you want to go down. There's so much out there. The industry's evolving. Don't be afraid to, maybe shift your course and see where that goes.
Love that. Okay. And over to you, Alex.
Mine would be that you're in control of your own career and nobody else is going to guide it. Nobody else is going to make the decisions for you. You have to take that ownership and that accountability and really do things that need to be done for yourself.
Perfect. Okay, great. So moving on to the second question. So I'll go back to you, Valeriya. And this can be for internship or, full-time hiring, whatever you might be looking for candidates for in your company. But so what personality trait do you look for most in candidates?
I look for those that are ambitious and willing to learn. Somebody who's pumped up, pleasure to be around, and then we'll teach all the technical that we need to.
Yeah, all the stuff you can't teach, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, over to you, Cody. What personality trait do you look for most in candidates?
The biggest is grit for me, is that they've kind of seen some stuff, but willing to learn. And that's kind of that I do hire a lot of younger people for that reason, is they've been through a lot, really. If you really think about what they've been through, So taking that on, and I could teach them how to sell, I could teach them the technical side of it. But if they're willing to work and learn and want to grow into a career or whatever that may be, there's the passion that younger generation has for things that I think you take that and you let them run with it. So
Yeah, seeing a trend here. We'll go over to you, Colleen, for the same question.
I would say willing to learn as well.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, great. And then what do you have, Alex, on that question?
I was going to say grit and resilience, but I will say communication and their actual personality. I'm looking for people that are going to fit well with my team and make a conscious effort to grow themselves in their career. And communication is a massive part of that for me. I can teach you the knowledge that you need to know, but you need to be able to communicate and talk to all the different people we work with.
Absolutely. Great answer. Yeah. Okay. And then over to Valeriya for the last question. I promise this is the last one. If you could instantly master a new business skill today, what would it be?
Prioritization, hands down.
It's a really good one. All right. What about you, Cody?
The art of AI, business analytics. It's growing. The industry keeps growing. It's going to keep evolving. I would like to kind of jet myself in there. I just don't have time, but once I do have time, that is something I would like to get myself into.
Yeah, it's a really good answer. Somebody on our last episode recording said the same thing, which I thought was really smart. What about you, Colleen?
Yeah, would have loved to learn coding, and that is something I still would want to get into.
Ooh, that's a really good one that nobody said yet. And then lastly, rounding it out with Alex.
I'd love to be able to present really confidently without feeling nervous or having to do a ton of prep work, which is what I have to do now when I'm presenting. Yeah, it's not my favorite thing to do, but it is a really key skill.
But have you noticed that over time, like, you need a little less prep time, or is the trend line down?
Yes, yeah, it is. I'm getting there. But it also depends on the context, right? Because if you're presenting in front of 20 people, I'm fine. Put me in a room in front of 200, I'm still going to be really nervous no matter how much prep I've done. So yeah, I'd love to be able to just walk out onto the stage and feel confident.
It's interesting how it's a totally different ball game depending on whether people are physically in the room with you or not. Like 200 people virtually, like at least hopefully 200 people will see this. It's very different from 200 people in the same room as you, right? Like I feel like that would terrify me as well.
Yeah. I'm more the other way. I'm a little bit more nervous online because I'm so aware of my surroundings that I'm like, my dog's just like, what are you saying? What's going on? And I'm like, it's not for you, all right? But 200 people, okay. Because I just when I go on to, as you've seen, Candice, when I go out to speak, like, I'm just looking to fight with people. So I'm like very confident. I just like the contrarian view. So I like to do that in person. But yeah.
We get the nice version of Maxie on this podcast.
It's the nicest you'll ever see. But come and say hi afterwards. I like peak and then I come back down. You know what? I think it's time to wrap up before I end up like jettisoned and exiled from this industry. So, but actually, in all seriousness, though, I actually learned a lot on this episode, and I'm really grateful for the guests that we have. They're really very interesting. So thank you for joining us, and also thank you just to our viewers and our listeners for hanging out with us for another episode of Data Movers. And you can check out gsa.net/JSA-TV and our YouTube channel and Jamie Scott TV for more episodes. And then you can find all of us on LinkedIn, I think, and we'd love to connect. And then we'll see you soon for the next episode. I'm pretty excited.
Thanks, everyone. See you next time.